Before you listen to this episode, let me quickly pop in to say apologies for the audio quality. We have once again been plagued by technical difficulties, but rather than re-record what is otherwise a good episode, if I dare say so myself, we decided to edit it to the best of our abilities and send it out to you on time. Thank you for being the best audience and bearing with us through all this, and hopefully you'll still enjoy the episode despite how it sounds.
Does it sound manly enough? Bring me beer, woman! Hi, and welcome to the next episode of Make Romance Great podcast, when me, Monica, and my bestest friend Paulina try to make romance great.
I'll try to help people realize what makes romance great.
Also that. In this episode, we will talk about the significance of the significant other. And the thing that we just agreed to say just a couple of minutes ago is that it will mostly be about the heroes, about the male heroes of the romance. We are absolutely saying sorry to all of our queer listeners. We will get into this in some other episode because we also realize that queer romance doesn't follow the romance schemes as much as the classical romance, let's say.
Yeah, queer romance, just like queer relationships, I imagine, have their own set of rules, their own set of tropes, archetypes, motifs that keep repeating themselves, understandably so, because it's about relationships that are not straight, where straight relationships and books about straight relationships have had centuries of perpetuating certain things, and some of these still persist to this day, as we'll get into. But I think even though we're going to be focusing mostly on the heroes and male protagonists, it is important to very quickly note that to anyone who still disses romance as a genre, just remember that romance by definition has to have two character arcs and not just one. Most other genres get away with having one protagonist, a bunch of side pieces, and you just deal with one character arc and have fun with that. Romance deals with two. It's not just how the two come together, fall in love, and stay together, but their each individual journey and how that impacts the relationship. So please don't come at romance ever again unless you've had to manage more than one main hero, protagonist, whatever. To follow from what we've been discussing, there's so many different ways to tackle how the romance hero got to be the way he is. But the easiest way is probably by discussing how he differs through different subgenres. Because yes, there is such a thing as here's the romance hero. He does this, that, and the other. He looks like this or that. But once you start breaking it down into what different types of romance are focusing on and looking for, there are some subtle differences. And the most stereotypical, I guess, the one version of the hero that everyone knows tends to come from classical romance.
Yes, absolutely. Besides the different subgenres of romance, we would also have a look at when the particular book was written, because how the romance is being written, let's just repeat the words, let's say 30 years ago, and how it is done now, the differences are, well, quite big, and not a lot of books are aging well, let's say it this way, but some of them are. And but yes, but the typical structure of the book and typical structure of the how the characters are built and how the heroine would look like and how the hero would look like, this also very much differs if it comes to, yes, of course, the subgenre, but also when this book was written.
And you've been having the most visceral reactions to that by rereading, what's it called? Devil's Brides? Yeah, Stephanie Lawrence's Devil's Bride, which was written in the 90s. Actually, let's quickly look it up.
I think it was beginning of 2000s. In Poland, it was published in 2004,
First published in
but the
1998.
yeah, but like I see the copyright is 1998, so well,
Yeah,
it's
th
well
that sort of
6 years
cost.
difference,
Yeah.
and it was much before the internet was very spread.
And when translators
So
still got plenty of time to work on their
yes,
part.
absolutely. And this is what I can actually see while reading this book. I didn't finish it, and I don't think I will finish it because it makes me really, really annoyed. Even though when I was reading this book when I was 17 or something, I absolutely adored these books.
Yeah.
I read the whole series that is starting with The Devil's Bride. I don't know what's the name of the series, Sinsters or something like
Yeah,
this,
it's
because
just
that's the
the
last name.
Sinister series, yeah.
Yeah, I think so, because this is just the last name of most of the male heroes. But yeah, I absolutely love these books.
But they have
When
not aged well. Because I've reread a one or two like within the last few years and comparing what I read now versus how I reacted then. Yeah, back then it was very much that's all there was to romance, and that's what romance was. It never once occurred to myself as a young reader and probably to
no,
other romance writers out there that you could write romance differently until it started to happen and until it started to get popular. You did have this archetypical, he has to be tall, he has to be handsome, he preferably has to be dark in some way, either as a personality or like dark hair. You couldn't be dark skinned. That was not acceptable in romance. And especially in historical romance, of course, he has to be rich. That's kind of part of the fantasy, like not having to worry about money. Admittedly, means the happy ending is a very happy ending. You don't worry about money. That makes things easier, even if
yeah,
I'm sure I would love to see some working class romance set in the 1800s, but we'll see.
I'm waiting for you to write it.
I need to get the idea, like for the actual
Yeah,
plot. I have just the idea for setting.
okay.
But yeah, but that was what pretty much every single romance book in those 90s, 2000s was like. And every hero was like that. They were just different, slightly different skins, to use video game terminology.
Yeah, I remember I kind of noticed that even when I was reading this book at 17, 18 years old, because I couldn't read these books one after another.
Hmm.
So I was reading like let's say two or three of them, and then I had to pause because pretty much most of the stories were kind of the same.
It's the exact same book, just slightly different.
Yeah,
Literally.
like yeah, you're just getting the same, more of the same, but like slightly different settings and with different names. This is what I noticed by like when reading and then just going like just having a look at different moments of the book because I didn't like read it from beginning to end because well, I was quite bored, let's say. Although I must say I would definitely read The Devil's Bride and any other of Stephanie Lawrence's book rather than any of the modern dark romance fantasies or something because
Mhm.
it's still very well written, I would admit that. And is it toxic sometimes? Yes.
Like most historical romance, really.
Is it
Still.
concerning? Yes, but like what I'm thinking is the most concerning thing is not the devil's behavior, this is a nickname for the main hero, but the way the author is kind of trying to convince us that it's not there yet. So the guy is overstepping very, very much, but the author is kind of convinced us that this is almost overstepping. He didn't do this. So, like, when he grabbed her somewhere in the stables and she was saying, don't you dare kissing me. or I will start screaming. And he's like, and who will hear you? And she's like, well, actually, that's true. And then he's like, but you like when I kiss you? And she didn't answer, yes, I do, even though this is true, but she never says it. And so, according to the author, it's fine because she likes it. She does like it, but he doesn't know it. He has this like, well, the male sixth sense that I know that the woman loves it because I'm so experienced, whatever, whatever.
It's that
Um,
combination of he's never really been turned
yeah,
down. It's a very,
yeah,
if not implied, then point blank said in the book that he's had, dalliances with women before. He's
yeah.
had sexual partners before, and he has women lining up to try to marry him because
It's
he
very weird that he doesn't have syphilis yet.
yeah, that's its own thing. But it's on the one hand just that audacity of man who's never been turned down and never been rejected. But on the other, that thing that Laura Kinsale was talking about in Dangerous Men and Adventurous Women in her essay about the androgynous reader, because it's not really about the hero, it's about you as a reader being in the heroine's place. And if you could convince yourself, well, yeah, actually, he's making a lot of sense. He's not really overstepping. It's about that. It's about you going that this is what the heroine represents. Like she's the placeholder. You're as a reader experiencing these things, imagining these things, and going, is this where my boundaries are? Is this what I'd be comfortable with? Oh, yeah, that sounds a little bit exciting because you have the safety blanket of if it gets too much, I'll just close the book. And back in those 90s, 2000s, the more erotica leaning and darker romance, we're still nowhere near the level of dark romance that we get now. Dark romance has gotten very dark, like
It
uncomfortably
is.
dark.
It is uncomfortably dark, and this also comes to what Mary Jo Putney wrote in Welcome to the Dark Side when she was writing about the dark romance back then, so 80s, beginning of 90s. This is exactly this. So she was saying, like, quote, what makes dark romances feasible is the safety net. No matter how threatening the situation or how wounded the body and spirit, the reader of a genre romance knows that all of the issues will be satisfactorily dealt with by the end.
Hmm.
And she was also talking about, like, she was quoting or just talking to us about one of her books that one of the heroes had very, very dark story in his past, obviously, because all of the unacceptable behavior of the a hero will be explained with dark past, because that's just easy, I would say. And yeah, so she was talking about in one of her books when the male hero is raping a woman at the very beginning of the book. This is not the main heroine, but it happens. And this already puts her books in the dark romance side. And I was thinking, oh, my sweet summer child.
Yeah.
Oh, my sweet summer child. Like, I would quote unquote love to keep the dark romance
Just to
in
that
that
level.
situations, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
not what we have now, which is quite disturbing, but we'll get to that in some other episode one
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, you've touched on a really important point that, well, we've discussed already in like the what we have always seen like through the classical romance lens as the hero, like he's tall, dark, and handsome, he's broody, all that he also has a dark past quite frequently of some sort. All of those characteristics and motifs we're now seeing those in romantasy. Like historical romance, even the ones written nowadays mostly stay the same, but the tropes have carried on to romantasy.
Yeah, and what I would also add to how the classical romance or like historical classical romance is written is because, like, in pretty much every book, the plot of the hero's journey or heroine's journey, depends who is the main character, the character's journey, let's call it this way, will be something like a person versus something. So
Mhm.
it can be a person versus environment or person versus themselves. And the romance adds here a character versus character.
Hmm.
In historical, it will be mostly a man versus woman. And this is also quite important in how the classical historical romance is being written, because yes, of course, we'll have how the man looks like. So as you said, sometimes the adjectives are so very contradictory, honestly, because the guy will be tall and massive, but also very slender or something. It's like, which one is this? Decide.
Yeah, he's tall and muscular, but he's lean and like, yeah,
Yeah,
slender and all these things. Like he's all of them all at once.
everything, everywhere, all at once.
Literally, like this
Yeah,
is the man of everything. So whichever one it is that you fancy, just picture that.
yeah,
It's
pretty
probably
much.
correct.
Yeah, there will be steel muscles, and his eyes are the essence of green, like nothing is more green. No tree, no nothing is more green than his eyes, which is kind of funny. But like, if it comes to the character, the heroine will mostly observe him as something, and it will be mostly at the very beginning that the guy will be arrogant and overbearing, but also she will notice that he's very helpful and caring at the same time. But sometimes he carries it too much because he wants his women safe at home because nothing can happen to them. This is very rapist culture.
Very abusive and very controlling.
Yeah, but it's also being portrayed as that he's very protective, and then he will see with like when the plot goes on, they will see a woman as a partner, but guess what? Mostly at the end, she will accept this, she will kind of notice that she won, but to make him more comfortable, she will decide to stop being as adventurous as she was
Yeah,
during the plot,
yeah. There's still
which
it.
is kind of, yeah, showing us that she won, but this is shown to us as a compromise. This is ridiculous type of the compromise because, after all, the novel plot aside, we should see that historically, this is historical. So she's still in the lower position than he is. And it's still, she's kind of fighting for the bare minimum, well, for us, but like these books are not historically written books. These are modern novels. Even if they are written 30 or 20 years ago, they are still modern novels. And it's kind of, yeah, so it's using the history argument whenever it suits us, but when it doesn't, we'll just discard it, right?
Mm.
So we will say it's like, yeah, but you write these books for modern women, so maybe show them something more, not the compromise when she's fighting for the bare minimum that modern women have.
Is that sort of if you get to ever see that because it tends to be more for like sagas and books in the same series when you then
Yeah,
have characters from previous books mentioned and it's always implied like in case of Devil's Bride it's implied like Honoria is then very much like ruling inside the house like he still does everything that she ever asks of him and she holds the reins. It's the metaphor of the man is the head of the house and the woman is the neck that she
blah
makes him
blah.
turn wherever she wants. But is
Yeah.
that really a win if like, I can't remember what she was actually after. I remember there was in one of the other ones, one of them wanted to ride horses and he relented
No,
and let her ride
so
horses. But like,
ugh,
is that really a win?
So Honoria's biggest dream was to leave to Egypt and to live there.
Yeah, which she fully abandoned. I think it's implied somewhere that they went on a trip or that they went on honeymoon to Egypt, and that's about it.
Yeah, pretty much. What also was kind of annoying me, which I forgot because, well, when you are 18 and you are hot and bothered, you
Oh my God, yes, you have all sorts of thoughts.
absolutely, and you read romance and you have quite a lot of seamy scenes, and they are, well, full of desire and they are quite exciting, let's be honest, especially when you are not telling your mom what you're reading.
No.
Um, but now when I was just going through this, so The Devil's Bride has loads and loads and loads of these scenes.
Oh yeah.
So obviously it just goes gradually, like more and more further and further. So it starts with loads, and there's loads of fucking kissing. And at the time, like in progress, so like with the overstepping and doing things he doesn't know if she likes it or not. That's one thing we already said about. But there is also very problematic thing, I would say, that he uses desire and these kisses and sex to get his way. So he wants something and he will be kissing her or touching her, etc., like or getting to all of the hot scenes. Yeah, and he is there like over there he's very possessive. Like so he hold her possessively, he kissed her greedily or something. Very often this happens when they have some sort of argument with. So like the subplot of the story is the murder of one of the cousins of the sinister family. And of course Honoria wants to be a part of the investigation, and he's like, no, because this is dangerous and I'm the head of the house and this is my things and my cousin brothers, well, whatever. And she really wants there and she's pushing and she is a part of the investigation. At the end of the day he's not very happy with it, but she's not letting him go. She only lets go at the very end when she conquered already, but yeah, we talked about it as well. And every time she would want some information, she would want to get into all of the investigation. And he will be trying to distract her with kissing. And this is what I didn't like about the relationship at all. So it was him like pretty much weaponizing the passion, the sex, desire to get his way, which was horrible. However, I must say that to big plus goes how all of the sexy scenes were described. Oh my God, let's please go back to these times.
Absolutely. I think what you've just talked about, that's an interesting duality of who the romance hero is to the heroine of the story versus to the reader. Because yes, as you've just said, when we look at classical romance, and it's not just historical, like so many of those older books, the implication was that the hero would use sex as either some sort of a bargaining chip, like I'll give you pleasure if you do whatever, or if you stop doing whatever, or in like I'll distract her. Like, it's frequently described like she forgot what she actually wanted to say and she stopped being so angry because he kissed her and all this. To the heroine, that is, let's call a spade, that's manipulation. But to the reader, who is in one way or another escaping her reality and escaping into a fantasy world, especially when like so much of it, as you said, is just kissing or like making out, to me that reads as, oh wow, were we really that deprived of like basic human touch and affection as like kissing and foreplay in the 90s and early 2000s, that just having this was steamy enough, not just for like teenage us who had no idea what relationships were like, but to adult women as well who were escaping into these books. I think that's also something that I think we're seeing these days in, I've definitely read at least one article or seen something in about romantasy, how the romantasy hero, yes, he's tall, dark and handsome and a broody shadow daddy with dark past and secrets, blah blah blah, but it's the fact that they are talking to the heroines like about consent, that they are talking about their feelings. This is now what the readers are missing and seeking for in relationships with men. Whereas even
This
though in the books to the heroines, that's still like you're withholding information or you're being somewhere manipulative because that part stayed on as the romance hero trope.
This is also very interesting because about this shift of what the hero should look like and how he should act, etc., etc. There is very cute, I would say, rant of Daphne Clare in her essay Sweet Subversion, which is also part of Dangerous Men and Adventurous Women. So we talked 1993, when she kind of was very unhappy with the first book of the, I would call it, new romance genre, where we started to see different. heroes and different heroines, but like mostly heroine, when she was very, yeah, I would say quite unhappy with different type of heroes. So, quote here, the American soft center romance has taken its place alongside other popular variations on the romance theme. But so many readers objected to the blunt, politically correct hero that now the editorial cry is come back Heathcliff. Sweet, sensitive, new age men who may be wonderful husbands in real life don't provide enough challenge and excitement for the fantasies of strong, confident, successful 1990s women. End of quote. And I'm just laughing because, well, what happens in the world? The beginnings of new romance. The classical romance authors are like, oh no, not the political correctness.
Back in my day, a man was a man and a woman was a woman.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, she kind of explained this later on, quote again, romantic heroes are arrogant autocrats and macho males, not because women are masochists, but for the same reason that 007's enemies possess all that unlikely technology. Victory over a weak and ineffectual adversary is not worth much, but when a woman has a big, tough, powerful male on his knees and begging her to marry him, that's a trophy worth having.
Oh
Do
my
I,
gosh.
end of quote, do I agree? This is very basic, Daphne, sorry.
Oh my gosh, like this quote, hearing it in full, literally just made me realize because up until then, like yes, my thoughts were going, that is the advent of new romance is how we're starting to split. But it's specifically the part where she says it's a victory. Like treating romance as a fight to be won is a very classical romance thing. It was always a conflict, not just in terms of, the literary terminology, but it was almost a literal conflict of they were arguing with one another, they were on opposite sides, whatever. It was something to be won, where the victory was them loving each other. Whereas New Romance was like, how about we both get on the same page?
Listen to this. So, this is the end of this essay.
Hmm.
Quote again. A smoking .45 and six corpses at his feet is a male fantasy. A woman will settle for one life hero at hers. And if she places a dainty foot upon his neck, it is only to invite him to kiss it. End of quote. What the fuck, Daphne? What the fuck?
I mean,
Yeah,
look, Daphne,
but
I'm not
I
yucking
mean,
your yum. If that's the fetish that you're into, like stay in within that. Like I'm happy for you. But I think trying to treat relationships, even fictional ones, as a competition, as something to be won. Girl, I hope you're in a better place right now, because it didn't sound like you were there
yes, I,
then.
yeah, absolutely. But well, let's just stop. Well,
Let's stop dunking on Daphne.
absolutely. And the classical romance.
Let's start dunking on romantasy because that's where all the
Or
trends
actually
went.
no, or actually no. But just short points. So there is also this thing that goes. This is the part of the plot of every historical romance. Here I'm quoting Robin Donald in Mean, Moody, and Magnificent, which pretty much describes every hero in historical romance, let's be honest.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, quote, but even before she sees this, at some purely instinctive level, the heroine knows that she can trust him. However, she also knows that the initial attraction is powerful but almost entirely sexual. She understands that there is much more to love than physical attraction, and she is not going to bestow her future on the hero until he too realizes this. It takes him some time, blah blah blah, end of quote. So, this is also what happens in The Devil's Bride, and as far as I remember, in other Stephanie Lawrence novels and the other historicals that I was reading. So, she's kind of annoyed with the guy. He is, as we said, macho man, the autocrat. He oversteps a lot, etc. He's arrogant, and she keeps telling him, you are too much, you are arrogant, and I'm very annoyed with you. But also, she would be seeing that he's very helpful. She cares about the family, etc., etc. And there is this, again, the sixth sense that she knows I can trust him. So I know he's a very dangerous man, but still, I feel very safe with him, which is kind of blah blah. And another thing, the last thing I promise about
Devil's Bride.
talking about Devil's Bride and altogether about classical historical romance,
Mm,
it is this still follows the Greek kalos kalakagatos. So the heroes, the heroine and the hero, they will be beautiful, good, and wise. And this is
yeah.
how Devil Sinister is. He's beautiful, very handsome. He's good, even though annoying, but like at the core, he's a very good person. And he's wise. So we are still following the antics ideas and yeah, pretty much that's it.
We're following
And
the ideas from the antics with the touch of what
Christianity,
I mean, there's this. I was going to go
always.
with Rachel Fedder's The
Oh, that's
Darcy
fine.
Myth book, where in the chapter that she was talking specifically about like paranormal romance and vampire, where she went, you want to have sex with the idea of danger, and it's that a lot in that classical romance. It's not about the hero actually being dangerous as such, even though it's implied that he can be. It's about the idea that he could be dangerous, but obviously not to the heroine. Like he makes her feel safe, but if something were to happen, he's big and strong and powerful and whatever enough to keep her safe and to keep other danger away.
By hearing all of this, I think our listeners who are familiar with maybe historical romance but are familiar with romantasy may see that the historical romance hero is actually the forerunner of fantasy romance hero,
Yes,
right? So
so
a lot
much.
of these things we see now in the romantasy. However, what I was also interested in when reading Devil's Bride was I was paying attention very much in what sounds the hero makes because it
Yeah,
this is very modern thing like saying modern I think 2004
it's
2000 sorry
certainly a newer thing.
2023
Yeah,
24 25 this is very much contemporary as now
yeah.
that the romantasy authors will be paying a lot of attention in how the hero says something. So
He's
Stephanie
always fucking
Lawrence
grunting.
wasn't. It's always grunting, it's always murmuring, it's always, I don't know, like I'm waiting for the novel when
They
the
just
hero will
talk.
start barking.
That's in the monster genre.
It is in the monster genre, but this is something very, very different. But yeah, so this is very much showing us like mad, bad, and dangerous to know, or mean, moody, and magnificent. These are actually the titles of the
Mm.
essays from Dangerous Men, Adventurous Women. But like, this is very much it. And by making notes to this episode, I actually and well, semi-ranting in writing about the Devil's Bride, I realized it's like fuck yeah. Like, this is how Sarah J. Maas actually convinced us that Tamlin is the hero.
Mm.
Because, and why did I believe that? Because, like, after, like, well, spoilers, sorry. Um, because
That's
after,
literally how
like,
every romance book was written. That
this
was the
is literally how
convention.
all of the heroes were.
Yeah.
So he was there. There was sex, there was kissing, there was kind of semi-manipulation with sex, although Tamlin didn't do this as extensively as classical romance heroes actually. But like after that, keeping the heroine safe, doing everything so she is staying safely in his court, in his palace, whenever she is being safe and controlled. Well, we will not talk about that. This is what Feyre wanted in the first book, and then it changed and whatever and whatever. So we'll talk about Sarah J. Maas at the end of this season, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, we all believed, or pretty much most of us, at least people who were already into romance, knew some of the romance novel. This is how the romance heroes were described for years.
Yes.
Exactly this. So he was just the typical heroes, and most people, as we already agreed some episodes ago, we don't read romance to get some splendid plot twists in the romance subplot. We know what is going to happen, so we are not looking for like, is it Tamlin or maybe it's Lucian or maybe this is this mysterious Rhysand. It didn't matter.
No,
because
they all
he
had their
was
own
just
archetype.
fitting.
Literally, like you read the first book, A Court of
Yeah,
Thorns and Roses. Tamlin is written as the hero. Lucian is very much written as the sidekick, the snarky,
yeah,
the
yeah,
cutting. You almost want to believe that he's gay because that's kind of how he's coded in the first book.
yeah, he is.
And with Rhysand, who doesn't appear until pretty late and
Yeah,
is only ever again like throwing remarks and is being more associated with danger than anything else.
it
Again,
is.
if all you've ever read is romance, or if you're very familiar with romance, there was nothing about Rhysand that would make you think he would
Yeah,
ever be the actual hero.
yes. This is what we are now familiar with
Mm.
after. So we are more familiar with this type of romance plot because of
Because
Sarah J. Maas.
mm,
Because she was the first one who started to give us a little bit of this and that in her romance plot. But this is not what is typical to romance novels.
absolutely
And
not.
she made it very well. So I have a lot of beef with Sarah J. Maas, but like not here, not on this particular descriptions. So she made it very well, and I think a lot of romantasy authors fail at that because they will immediately start describing the protagonist, even though they will be like, oh, there is a guy I already have, but this bad king, he is this and that, but oh, he's so handsome and wildly beautiful, whatever. But the only thing she said about Rhysand, so he just appeared there, and the only sentence about him was, he was the most beautiful man I've ever seen. That's it.
Wouldn't you
Not
say
talking
though?
about his hair and his eyes and
Yeah, that
whatever
came
and whatever.
later.
That came later, but that's fine because he already was turning into a romance hero. But like she didn't hint us with that
But wouldn't you
before.
say now that because again the what we've talked about before is how so many of like the romance hero archetype that we know came from people trying to replicate Jane Austen's hero and doing it more or less successfully, but it's effectively all rooted in Mr. Darcy somehow, and some people are just better than
Somehow, yes.
others. Whereas with Akotar which didn't start off as such, but then kind of gave us a love triangle. I think all of those romantasy authors that are trying to replicate the triangle are fundamentally just failing at the love triangle. Because when we think my favorite love triangle is the Hunger Games, it is
Oh, yes.
it's beautifully balanced. It's not a romance, so neither Peter nor Gale are described as romance heroes would be, but their relationships with Katniss are both of equal value and just are touching on different aspects of her life.
Oh, yes.
And I think this is again why so many love triangles fail is because fundamentally the authors know that they want the heroine to end up with someone and they just
Yes.
cannot hide that bias. Whereas
Which pretty
hiding the
much,
bias was necessary for Akotar to work.
yes. And I would say that even A Quote of Thorns and Roses, not as a series, but as the first book, it was
Mm,
a successful
yeah.
romantic story.
It very much reads like if you want to stop there, you fully can. If again, it's
Yes.
then following more of that romance convention than fantasy, but had it not taken off and not been successful, and the publishers went, sorry, lass, we're keeping it just to one book. You can write it as fan fiction or try
Yeah.
someone else. It wouldn't have left people unsatisfied because it was
No.
clearly
No.
written to have that ending. To then expand on that, that was quite skillfully done in book two. Things fell apart sometime after that, but that's a
Yeah,
story
but
for another time.
yeah, but that was still skillfully done
Mm,
because it didn't only have Sergi Mas didn't only focus on the relationship as well as Suzanne Collins in the Hunger Games. She
hmm.
was focusing on her heroine and
Yes.
how what happened in the first book changed her and
Mm.
how the hero here, Tamlin, didn't
Changed as a
manage
result,
to, yeah, and like
effectively.
he like it changed him as well, but like he
Mm.
couldn't adjust to what kind of person Feyre become.
Yes, absolutely.
So Again, don't focus on the outcome you want to get. Focus on the hero's journey. That's pretty much it.
That is how you get a well-written romance hero, really. Because even
I would
if
say
if
so.
we if we sort of take a step aside and leave romantasy and classical romance in peace for a second, Steve going off bashing from us.
A
But
lot to rant about, so it's
there is
very
a lot
easy
to
to
run.
talk.
It is
Yeah,
easy to rant about. But when you look at like contemporary romance, and we're going to leave aside like some of the paranormal romance and the monster alien romances, like they are slightly different and they give us a little bit more diversity in terms of who the hero is. I mean, especially in like the true monster romance where it's not a humanoid creature even. So you can't apply human beauty standards to something that's a skull or a bit of slime or whatever.
yeah.
That's
A little
already
bit, please.
I mean, I don't know. Slime can change forms and shapes, and it could make itself look
Okay.
humanoid if it really wanted to, I imagine.
Oh, Jesus.
I was just thinking of Ditto from Pokemon, and I'm sorry for putting that thought in people's heads. Well, let's face it, Ditto was just a bit of slime.
Oh
That's
my God, I need to go to AO3 and see if there is a romance about Tito and
Don't forget Rule
someone.
32. If it exists, there's porn about it.
I'm pretty sure.
But yeah, like leaving those aside, the other more comparable actual hero that has his own archetypes and tropes we get in contemporary romance. And there's some stereotypes and archetypes in young adult romances, the contemporary ones. They do tend to be, I'd say, relatively unchanged. Like you get the bad boys, the nerdy boys, the good boys, and they just kind of update their behavior to match what's happening these days and how these guys
Yeah.
act. But they just stay the same, and because young adult has the built-in layer of it is ultimately a character's journey of self-discovery and coming into some sort of maturity, that there's always been that element of characters having to work figure themselves out. But we're getting more and more of that in contemporary adults, whether you want to call it new adults, new romance, both of those are having and very interesting takes on the hero, which I'm
Yes.
enjoying for the most part.
Me too, because when some diversity was introduced to the romance, it was happening quite slowly, let's say, but it mostly was about the heroine. So, because most of the readers of the romance novels are women, so the writers were just going with the flow and wanting the readers to be more immersed. In the stories, they were starting to make women much more diverse. So we started to have women with different skin color than white. We started to have romance novels with heroines coming from different parts of the world, with disabilities, with chronic pain issue, with chronic illness. Loads and loads and loads of different heroines.
In a way, the heroine stopped being as much a placeholder for the male gaze, and she became
Yes,
her own being that you could either
absolutely.
try to project yourself onto and be like, I still want to experience the romancy parts, but equally, you
Yeah.
were following her journey as much
Yes.
as you were the heroes.
Yes. While the first thing about Honoria in The Devil's Bride, I will not shut up about this book, was that she was taller than women normally were, but it was immediately destroyed by the author while saying that the devil was so tall that she still had to look up to look him in the eye, and I was like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the tall man thing will never die. And I am sorry to all the men who are having to deal with that impossible beauty standard placed on them because it bugs me. It really bugs me because there's no need for every single person out there, every single hero to be impossibly tall. Like, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't.
Yeah,
Get over yourself.
get over yourself and yeah, but like I would argue that this is not exactly the beauty standard that women imply on men. It's rather what patriarchy just goes and with gender stereotypes. So like man is the one who protects and whatever. So he obviously needs to be tall. Of course, some women are just, well, doubling that up by saying, well, man starts from
Yeah, it's
1.85 meters, whatever, but like men will be like, women ends with 55 kilos. It's like, are you trying to fuck a teenager or what?
yeah, I've heard, sorry to get on a side tangent, but I've
Yeah,
heard one dating coach beautifully explain that once, who worked mostly with female clients, to say, okay, you say you want a guy who's, 6 feet tall, 185 centimeters, whatever, and effectively talked the clients down to go, what is it that you actually want? Where you want to feel like you are smaller, you want to feel like you are safe and protected. All you want is someone who's bigger than you. It
yeah,
doesn't have to be a number. You can
yeah.
just say, I want someone who makes me feel small. And suddenly that's now, yes, it's still a very patriarchal
It
idea.
is.
That's what you should
Yeah,
want.
because it's protection, etc., and that woman is only valid when she's smaller than a man.
But at least it now opens up your options. So if you are online
Yeah,
dating right now and stuck in that bit of hell, try that.
yeah.
Try just working
This
out what it is
is
that you're actually after.
Yeah, this is the thing that was very nicely handled in one of my favorite romance novel by Beth O'Leary, The Flatshare,
Mm,
when both of the heroes, well, first of all, for most of the book they don't see each other, they only communicate by texting and writing themselves letters because they share the flat.
mm.
But he works night shifts, she works, well, regular shifts. But when he is home, she is not there, etc., etc.
Oh yeah.
And Beth O'Leary very nicely touched on the housing crisis in London. But at the end of the day, when they start meeting, um, her first, well, they are both very tall. She's tall and he is tall. So, like, if it comes to that, they are equal.
Yeah,
And her first description of the guy is like he's a little bit messy.
yeah.
So
Because
it's
guess
not
what?
like,
He
oh my
works
God,
night
he's
shifts. He
so
probably didn't
pretty.
have time. He probably didn't get enough sleep to try and come and
Yeah,
do the house
absolutely.
viewing. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like kind of ironically describes himself like he's tall, he's a man, and he's probably too brown.
Yeah, to be deemed as safe for
Yeah, absolutely.
for a
Yeah, absolutely.
flatmate to a woman. Yeah.
And we had more and more of this type of books, but I noticed that the diversity mostly remains in the contemporary romance sphere and in young adults,
Yeah.
while again, his like modern historical and modern romantasy is still following the same type of hero. We will get this as well in contemporary romance, like the famous Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood, when the girl is so tiny and she's so small, and the guy is such a mountain. And this is quite funny. But yeah, so it seems the contemporary and young adult are doing their best if it
They
comes
are.
to diversity in how the hero look like and how the hero should behave, or if he's allowed to gain weight, or if he's
Mm.
allowed to be vulnerable, if he's allowed to have mental issues that actually require hospitalisation, for example, like it is in the Scarlet series by Mona Kasten. But yeah, here is that we will have some diversity in how the hero is described.
Yeah.
And I very much appreciate that.
I do appreciate that as well because as we've talked about in our Kryptonites, like we do like an unconventional and atypical hero. But that being
Yes.
said, our favorites and the ones that we tend to remember and reach for, they those books do tend to be the outliers. I've been thinking just now of some of the other contemporary romances that I've read and what the heroes were like there. And there are still some archetypes or tropes or behaviors that may have changed from the classical romance hero archetype as such, but they're still consistent amongst themselves as contemporary romance, and they mainly pertain to behaviors. So, one of the things that I've noticed is the men still remain stubborn, to a degree. Like they'll either decide that this is the best course of action and I'm sticking to it, or they think that this is the best thing, or that this is the one bit that protects them, and they're reluctant to embrace change. I'm literally have spoiler alert by Olivia Dade. I'm sorry, I'm not entirely sure. I've got spoiler alert next to me, and the hero in there goes, "Well, I need to protect my image as an actor who's pretty but dumb, because I can't take that sort of image change, or it risks my career and my reputation." But that is just that version of him thinking he knows best, and or just trying to stay to protect himself and ending up being stubborn. I've read a fair few contemporary romances where the hero is, if not emotionally distant, then at least still slightly emotionally incompetent, in that he realizes things should be different. Maybe I should say that to her, but I don't know how. I don't know how to talk about feelings. I'm a man. I've never been taught how to talk about emotions. There's still some of that lingering in contemporary romance en masse, that stays and permeates and is there to drive conflict between the characters, and to drive, a bit of whatever plot is in there outside of the romantic thing, but to drive that forward and to create friction between characters and have them disagree on something before they can finally overcome that and come together for their happily ever after, or happily for now. So yes, the contemporary romance is getting better, and we are seeing a way more diverse range of heroes in terms of their looks and of their behaviors, compared to romantic and classical and historical romances. But there are still some threads that connect them, that I wonder how long it will take us to shed them. Because obviously, romance is a reflection of, maybe if not the world, then of what readers want. There's certainly, like, romance as a genre has had to be quite sensitive in responding to the Me Too movement, and we're now seeing beautifully, proudly, and openly romance discuss consent, point blank, verbatim in the books, that we didn't used to get. So I think as readers' expectations of men change, and as straight women's expectations of their male romantic partners change, I think we will see the hero of the romance in contemporary romance change alongside that to whatever new version is of what women want.
And we notice that it is already changing, right? It is
Absolutely.
already changing, as we previously quoted one of the
Yeah.
essay authors from The Dangerous Man
Yeah.
who
Just
was
so unhappy
very
with the soft
unhappy
men.
with that. Oh, absolutely. Yes, but yes, she was treating it only like from one point of view, right? So the successful businesswoman wants a challenge, whatever, whatever. But yeah, not every woman is a successful businesswoman, and maybe even if she is, she doesn't want to fight again
And
while
also,
she has to do this at work.
let's
Maybe
just
she wants to
consider
support.
let's just consider that maybe the successful businesswoman
It's
reads,
not a man.
no, but maybe she reads contemporary romance and Monster Fox, or all of those, what's it called, the werewolves, or the she's my fated mate, because I feel like that's where a lot of that toxic masculinity and the
There is.
the conventional classical romance hero tropes have also stayed, of like, yeah, like if that's what you want, if that's the hero you want, there are romance books that give you that. There are romance books that have preserved that. Go for it.
Yeah, and you mentioned the monster facts, right? Like monster or alien romance. This is what I wanted to touch on as well, because it gives us a very interesting point of view of the significant other. It's hard
Mm,
to call them a
yeah.
man sometimes. Because yeah, this is like one of the very not often moments when we actually talk about sex, not about gender.
Yes.
While when you will have a monster, that the only thing that makes them male but not men is that they have a dick.
Yeah, that there's some form of penetrative
It's
sex happening.
absolutely, and yeah, there is a penetrative sex organs together with, I don't know, tentacles sometimes. Hello, soul to keep.
But
But
also,
and
hello, very classical hentai.
also that. And oh God.
Sorry, that's a rabbit hole I inadvertently ended up falling through whilst at university, and I
Oh,
discovered
but that
that
was
hentai goes as back as like 17th century.
really, you will have
Yeah,
to tell me about
I have
that.
found woodblock prints of tentacle fox from
Oh,
16th
amazing.
century. That's
Bless
just
you,
a not
Japan.
tradition old as time.
Absolutely. But yeah, talking back to monster romance, when you will have a monster that doesn't even have a head per se, and they will just have like some kind of animal skull,
Mm,
and will be full of fur, and as you said, they only have a penetrative organ that and may have children, which may them male. It's very hard to force on them very traditional gender man roles because
yes.
is it a man? It's much more easy with demons, with vampires, with
Anything humanoid.
werewolves,
Yeah.
yeah, with orcs, etc. Because they resemble human. But
Mm.
like with this type of monster facts, it's like how would you even do this?
And also, I feel like as soon as the non-human is still humanoid, not only
Yeah,
authors and readers are projecting human beauty standards on them, even
yeah,
though, I mean, just to break it down logically, if you're an orc and your entire culture revolves around strength and fighting, then surely whoever not just is the biggest, but has like the biggest tusks, is then the most attractive because that's your sign of strength. But if you are
yeah.
not humanoid, if you're a blob, if you're a skull, if you're something, wandering fur, if you're an alien, that gives authors opportunities to explore different societies and make rules up. I've never actually finished reading it, but I do remember distinctly reading about Ursula Le Guin's Left Hand of Darkness, which is basically an anthropological book in the form of sci-fi, where it's
Hmm.
an anthropological exploration of inhabitants of another planet. And Ursula Le Guin, who loved exploring gender, has done plenty of work in there to show this is an alien society. They don't live under human conditions. They don't live with the same chemical compositions in the air, obviously they've evolved differently. Therefore, their society will be different. What is considered normal, beautiful, inappropriate will be different because of their environment. And monster romances have the perfect opportunity to do the same. And therefore, yes, I'm sure there's authors out there who have done monster romances in a way that's just another man's stereotype, but in a different form. But there will be some who have
Yeah.
done it justice and he'll go, no, if this is a walking skull, what is a walking skull capable of doing, feeling, thinking? What would it consider normal, abnormal, all of that?
And also, from the point of view of romance, it also explores it's like, all right, so the first thing that people notice is how the person look like. I'm not talking about the beauty canons, about the beauty standards, because, well, of course they exist, but like some pe different people will like different things. So, well, of course, one thing is conventional beauty, but the
Hmm.
second thing is like the what certain people may like. And of course, sight is our strongest sense, right? So
Hmm.
we can't really fight that. But if you will have a monster romance with a creature that the only resemblance to humans is that they can speak and they can walk on two legs, yeah, like what would make a woman or a man, because some of them are, of course, queer romance, and some of them will just switch and you will have a human man and monster female.
Hmm.
What must happen for this woman or man to fall in love with this creature?
Exactly.
And let me tell you, like in A Soul to Keep, which is, well, a monster romance, sometimes very smutty, but I like this nevertheless because it has, well, you have monster smut and you will have a cottagecore over there as well, which is interesting mix, but I very much recommend that. There are, well, most of the novels are with human female and the Duskwalker creature. which is male. But there were some that switched it, and you will have a female Dusk Walker and a human man. And there is also queer gay romance as well. So I will read it at some point. But this is very interesting. Like, and I found in Assault Keep the thing I very much like because the main, the heroine, she doesn't really pay attention in if she's like disgusted by the creature or if she's attracted. There is no such things, and she started to be attracted to him when she started to be attracted in his behavior, how he behaves, how he treats her, what he does, etc., etc. So this is what actually was explored there. So she started to find him beautiful and attractive once she fallen in love with the person he was.
That's the kind of demisexual energy that I think both of us specifically, but I'd imagine plenty of other
Yeah,
people are seeking for in romance because our gripe with so many of these contemporary romance and romancy and whatever is the obsession by authors to keep highlighting how beautiful, how gorgeous, how insanely handsome, hot, whatever the hero is, as opposed to just trying to sell the hero to the heroine to make the
which is the
heroine.
main thing,
That
right?
is the main
We
thing.
we don't give a fuck about how gorgeous the king of whatever is. We
For
only
all,
care about
yeah,
him as much as the heroine does.
for all that the author knows, there's plenty of readers that will pick up those books or go, for fuck's sake, here's another grey-eyed, dark-haired man where I actually preferred brown-eyed, blondes. It's like if you
Go and
keep
watch porn.
there's this, like if you keep stressing physical characteristics that for the most part are outside of people's control, then are you really creating an attractive hero, or is the attractive hero the one who really wins the heart of the heroine through his
No,
noble heart and pure love? Not to
no.
get too fairy tale about it, but I am actually kind of
We
looking a
already
little
explored
bit.
that.
I am looking a little bit about at Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez because even though I don't remember how he was described there, I want to say he was described as slightly lumberjack. But she wasn't
Yes.
banging on about him constantly.
No,
That wasn't the
no.
point. The point was that he was very kind to her and that he was nothing like her ex.
Yeah. And she was, well, she, like at the beginning, she was more talking about
Uh,
his wonderful goat in a shirt.
yes, yes,
Yes.
the little goat and the farmer,
Yes.
the the assortment of animals. So yeah, if you want a good romance hero in your books, give them a goat. Lol.
Thank you for listening.
Yes, I do think we need to start wrapping this up because I
Yeah,
think we've said everything there is to be said.
I think so. All right. So thank you for listening. If you want to share with us your thoughts or reach us for any other reason, please comment or write us an email to makeromancegreat.pod@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok on makeromancegreat_pod. And as a thank you for our wonderful writing tips on romance, you can buy us a coffee or you can support us on Patreon. And thank you again, and see you in fortnight. Bye.
Bye.